Here he is. Good morning.
How are you?
How are you doing?
I'm well.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So Lee, Travel Weekly editor, you've been running the Travolution initiative of Travel Weekly, part of the Jacobs Media and Global Tourism Resilience Council partnership. I want to thank you for your time, for your insights. You're a thought leader in the tourism industry, and that's why you're here today. We wanted to chat with you about how the industry is morphing during the COVID pandemic. I know you had great insights to share with the global tourism sector over the past months on the intersection of health and tourism, on digitization and tourism, and how we're entering into a new reality. And the old way of doing business is not really going to be valid anymore. What can you share with us? What are you seeing? And how do we here in Bosnia and Herzegovina can take some of these insights and translate them into practical steps?
Yeah, well, as you said, I think you're right. I think we're moving into a new era, and that's been only accelerated by what's happened in the last 10 months with COVID. So Travolution ran our annual summit in September last year. We had to do it online, so we were changing our model accordingly, and we went with a kind of a theme which was all about the reset, the reboot, and then the restart of travel, and sort of a 3-stage process. So the reset is all about thinking about your strategy. You know, let's go back to square one. Let's go back to the drawing board, and maybe it's time, it's the opportunity to have a good old rethink about how we do things. Once you've done that, you need to be able to actually bring in the technologies and the systems and platforms to achieve that. So that's your reboot. You know, you're taking your hardware, your software, and you're bringing in new stuff, developing new stuff if needs be, or creating new partnerships. And it's only then, when you've done those two things, can you restart. And obviously at the moment, restarting is difficult, but we obviously, as Justin just said, we very much hope that in the not too distant future, the industry can properly restart. And I think the people who've done the two processes before that in their reset and reboot were the ones who will restart the best and get out the blocks when travel can really get going again. So, you know, we hear a lot about sort of emerging technologies, and I think in the last 10 months, you've seen, you probably split it up into 2 broad areas. So there's been the initial hit, the short-term initial hit on companies and organizations of this pandemic and this crisis. And that's forced them to think very short-term about their technology needs in that moment. So many companies had to then suddenly go to remote working. Many went to remote selling, so they've been doing selling via, like we're doing now, with Zoom, bringing Zoom in. You know, no one had heard of Zoom 12 months ago. Suddenly, everyone's using it, or realizing they've got Microsoft Teams in their technology stack. They never really used it before, but suddenly this thing is brilliant. And actually, why weren't we using it before? Obviously, anything to do with contactless communications has been key. So you had companies that had to very quickly switch. So we were talking to a lot of tech suppliers. They were never busier than in the first sort of quarter, 2 quarters of last year, because they were suddenly having to work with their clients on getting these new technologies up to speed, even just getting laptops to people. So there was that initial burst of activity, which, you know, was short term, but a lot of the long term trends were seen within that. So, you know, in terms of long term trends, which I think COVID is only going to accelerate, you've got things like contactless and automation, and data has been important for a long time, and it's going to continue to be important. So data analytics, and then sort of overlaid with that, artificial intelligence, which people talk about a lot. About artificial intelligence, there's a lot of people thinking this will change a lot, and maybe it's overhyped at the moment. But if you're going to use a lot of data, you're going to have analytics. Artificial intelligence is the thing that can help you make sense of it all. And, you know, this thing will only be accelerated. And then we're seeing a lot of companies saying, well, you know, do we need the technology on site? Is that a risk? Is that something we need the hassle of? And the answer largely these days is no. So a lot of companies are moving into the cloud. You're getting the tech providers moving into the cloud, and as well as all the organizations out there moving their systems into a cloud-based system. So they move from having the hardware on premises, all the risks associated with that, to having all their software in a cloud. It can be a lot more efficient, can be a lot more effective. And because tourism has this natural cycle, it's very seasonal by its very nature. So your bookings come in at one time of year, your travelers go at one time of year. Each company has its own natural cycle through the year. You want to be able to sort of bring on technology as and when you need it. So as demand, and that's what cloud allows you to do. You can scale back when it's quiet, you can ramp up the server requirements when it's so quiet. So these things are just, this was going this way anyway, but what COVID has done is come in and said, this is now not a nice to have, it's a must have. And you've really got to power forward. And I think fundamentally at the end of it is that a lot of companies and organizations in travel and tourism have been severely hit by this, as we see. So they are losing people, they are losing resources, and they're going to have to find ways of doing more with less. And technology is that enabler to do that. Doesn't mean it doesn't make it happen.
Right.
And that by magic, but it very much can do that if you implement it correctly.
Right. So let's switch gears a bit from technology to what you're seeing travel brands. What are they doing? How are they reacting to the pandemic? And what are you seeing in terms of these brands working to regain market confidence?
Yeah. So I think they went through a period of survival. So that was first thing, and that's still ongoing because the situation is changing. So a lot of brands are taking as much help as they can to survive in the first place. Like I said, a lot went on into remote operations. But I think what the brands are doing are emphasizing their expertise and their knowledge. You've got a customer base that is very, very insecure about booking. Well, a lot of questions they want to ask. Different questions to pre-COVID. No one ever asked about how safe it is from a health point of view to go somewhere or to get into an airport or to get onto an aircraft. So the brands that have responded well to this are providing information and advice that are more in quantity and quality, more so than ever before. And I think that is reflecting a move of the consumer. So we just heard from Justin about people's desire to read reviews from other people. That thing that's always going to be the case, and TripAdvisor is always going to be big because of that. But I think what we're seeing is brands are understanding that they are seen as being the experts as well. So they are being seen to be the people who've got the trustworthy information.
Right.
It's filtered down. It's tailored to their requirements, and that's what brands do. So they've got to push that aspect. That's always been the case. But when it's been easy to travel, I suppose the traveler's been very easily convinced that it's very easy to find that information for themselves and do things for themselves. So I suspect some of these brands are coming back into vogue from a consumer that needs reassurance.
Yeah, it was interesting that over the past number of years, we saw travelers moving from big brands into more niche, kind of undiscovered destinations, wanting more customized experiences, looking for more authentic and less commercial. But now with the pandemic, it seems like it gave a lifeline to these brands because they can come in and say, we, the Marriott or the Sofitel, whatever the brand may be, we're large enough to have our own standards and we deploy these standards and so forth. And that seems to come at a cost to these independents. Are you seeing anything of that nature, and can these non-branded operations, including the small accommodations, for example, what can they do to project the same level of confidence?
I think there's a danger of that, but then at the same time, you think about what this pandemic's done to the consumer. And I think as we just heard before, the consumer's probably going to look for things or opportunities and experiences where they're not going to be put into one place along with lots of other people. So that kind of mitigates against a bit like the big brands a bit, because for the big brands, that's their job to put as many people as possible into a fairly small space. I mean, that's kind of why you go on holiday. So actually from a consumer demand point of view, you can see them looking for that more niche product and saying, actually, I want to be on my own somewhere and off the beaten track a bit more. So I think that's in their favor. I don't think it's necessarily a case that everyone's going to sort of go back to those places they know well and trust. So I think the challenge then for that long tail of supplier, whether it's accommodation types or the things that you do on holiday, the challenge then is to get that product in the market, which means a degree of digitalization of that product. You can't really continue to be offline and hope that people find you organically. You've got to get out there and push it. And I think what we're seeing is you've got certain businesses and organizations creating these marketplaces now for small suppliers, where they don't have to sacrifice their independence in any way, but they do become part of an ecosystem of a marketplace, effectively, where the marketplace itself helps you get to that end supplier, end buyer, whether that's through a third party potentially or into consumer direct. It's often going to be through a third party. So, a few examples. In the UK, Visit Britain has created its own travel ecosystem. It's effectively a marketplace. So they're saying to all the small suppliers who have got all these very niche, small, local experiences, tours, trips, bed and breakfasts, all this kind of stuff, who tend to do things very offline, is join the marketplace.
Right.
We are the conduit then to put you into a tour operator's program or a travel agent recommending you to the end consumer, or maybe even direct to the end consumer. So I think what we're going to see, and the technology has to be part of this, because they create this intermediary level where people who haven't got the ability themselves to do it and really haven't got the time, and they want to focus on the tour, they want to focus on the experience, but somebody else can take on that distribution and marketing aspect.
I want to talk about this a bit more, but first I'll take a commercial break, and I want to thank you, your organization, Travel Weekly, and the Global Resilience Council for the support, but I want to single out Laurie Myers. I know that she's with us on the line, and Laurie's been a great champion. She's the biggest champion of Bosnia and Herzegovina now. She wants to see the country featured in all of the global forums, and she's so vested in this thing. She contacted me yesterday, about 2 minutes before we went live, and she said, fix your tie. So thank you, Laurie. I know you're listening, so we appreciate this. But I want to ask you your final question. Speaking of digitization, there is a growing IT sector here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's quite vibrant. And there's great talent, young people entering the sector, doing some wonderful work in terms of software development and otherwise.
Yeah.
And from what you're seeing, is it possible for these companies to ride this wave of increased digitization, or will they find competition from large companies and more off the shelf, or can we create customized products here, and maybe not only for Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also for them to export to other maybe tourism?
I think that's the great opportunity, actually. When you look at the tech sector, I only know in travel, but I assume it's similar in other sectors. A lot of the tech companies that we know who are UK based will have developers dotted around the world. They like to have developers, they call it following the sun. So you can be up 24/7 continually developing. And Eastern Europe has been a very good place to have development hubs. Dubai has been another one, some Middle East, where you can get relatively good value developers to help you do what you do. I think actually the trend that's going to come out of this is that a lot of those tech firms have had to go back to basics a little bit, focus on what they really are good at, and dispense with some of the stuff that they would have liked to have done in good times. But at the moment, it doesn't make sense. So they're actually going to be out there looking for people who could do those other projects, which they don't need to put the whole time and effort and risk into, but they can offset it with somebody doing it for them. Small startup, just a single developer sitting maybe in Bosnia Herzegovina, who's got a good idea and can integrate their tech. And I think the way the tech is going, with you've got increasing interoperability of tech with API connections. A lot of the big companies now have APIs for developers, so that they say, look, we've got all this data, we've got all this knowledge, we've got our core systems. We can't really develop and we can't be innovative within ourselves as we would like to be. But there's a whole community of people out there, a network of developers, who we are happy to sort of allow to ingest some of our data and some of our know-how and create something new for themselves. And if it works, we may well then integrate it into our system. So I think that's the whole point of how technology is growing into this really great global ecosystem and network, is that there are opportunities.
Right.
You may not be there to, you're not going to be reinventing the wheel, maybe. No one needs to reinvent a new booking system for travel. There's lots out there.
Right.
But there's lots of areas around the edge, which I think for a small small countries and destinations is potentially very powerful, because you can get yourselves involved in some really great global businesses, but just on that edge.
Well, thank you so much. I have to say that I walked into this session feeling a great deal of intimidation. I never interviewed a journalist before, let alone a seasoned one like you. So I hope it was okay.
No, it's good. I'm fine. Equally, I mean, I don't consider myself to be. I don't code. I don't make systems. I'm not an expert. I'm only an expert in the sense that I talk to other people or people writing for us. So I take what they say, and I hope that was of interest. If I can do one quick last bit of
please.
If I can do a quick commercial break myself towards the end, is that I think, as you know, Ibrahim, we work with the New Deal Europe guys, and we've got a session coming up on April the 12th. You can have a look at details on newdealeurope.com. And that really reflects what we're talking about there. That is an opportunity for buyers and sellers to come together using technology and create those contacts and that ecosystem, which travel is so key for. Travel is, if nothing, a big global ecosystem. So I just think it's important, as well as the technology, people get together and meet and swap ideas and create those connections and businesses that we're going to need. Yeah,
thanks for the plug. Thanks for the reminder. I'd have to say that also Lori's been pushing this, and
she has.
She spoke to us about this, and we're in discussion. So let's see how this morphs. But thank you again. This won't be the last time we chat with you.
No, I'm sure not, Ibrahim. And good luck with everything.
Thank you. Appreciate that. You have a wonderful day.
And you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.